What's your point today?
You know, we talk about Jeff Bezos, maybe a little Michael Bloomberg, billionaires. There'll be a lot of alliteration, I promise. That's what everyone who watches the show.
Tabloids appreciate it. Yes.
Yes. Well, rumors abound that Jeff Bezos might be selling the Washington Post to then buy the Washington Commanders. He can't get out of D.C. It's amazing. The New York Post reported this. Now, the reason that deal would make sense is because he's trying basically to sweeten the pot for Dan Snyder, who really doesn't like the Washington Post and really doesn't seem to like Jeff Bezos, by selling the Post. And then perhaps, the theory goes, he'll be able to sell the Commanders. He'll feel more comfortable selling the Commanders to Jeff Bezos. That's the New York Post report. There are other rumors. Axios has reported just last month, I believe, that Michael Bloomberg is also potentially eyeing the Washington Post. A source told Peter King over at NBC, it'll never happen. Dan Snyder detests the Washington Post. No way he'd sell to the owner of that paper. J.P. Finlay, also at NBC, tweeted, I've had people tell me the Snyder family has absolutely no interest in selling to Bezos. Meanwhile, Jeff Bezos also, you may remember, made a big splashy announcement just last fall that he's going to be giving $120 billion away to charity. Layoffs at the Washington Post started just yesterday. They started on Tuesday. This is Axios reported on the plans of an initiative also on Tuesday called, quote, Rebuild Local News. So as the Washington Post is laying off these national reporters, there is now a coalition of outlets and media groups that have this initiative called Rebuild Local News. It's been around for a couple of years, but Axios and Sarah Fisher over there reported on the initiative to, quote, deliver approximately $3 to $5 billion into the local news economy from philanthropy, business, consumers, and the government, mostly through tax credits. Now, they say, of course, not all support would be used to hire or retain journalists, but if a meaningful fraction was, local news would be transformed. The number of local reporters would likely double. Most local news deserts would be eliminated, resulting in a local news system more geared to serving communities. That's a big deal. Now, I don't really think tax credits for subscriptions to get around paywalls and ad buys are going to do as much as this group thinks that they're going to do. Those are all part of the proposal. It's a package of a bunch of different proposals that comes together in this big sweeping plan to rebuild local news, as their name says. I'm not sure that that stuff is going to be as powerful as they think. There are some steps like changing the way you can apply to be a tax-exempt nonprofit news organization via the IRS. That's a good thing. Scrutinizing media mergers with localism in mind, also a very good thing and also could be very powerful. But think about this. The group is predicting $3 to $5 billion could double the number of local reporters. 3 to 5 billion. Bezos bought the Post for $250 million back in 2013. The paper was actually going to lose money last year, per calculations, back in 2022. But they have been profitable in years since Bezos bought the paper. In other words, they don't need Jeff Bezos as much as local media needs Jeff Bezos and needs that money. Now, it should, if it is given, come with no strings attached, of course, so that you don't have billionaires pulling the strings of media. Ideally, that's not the healthiest media ecosystem to have, but you can see how these numbers, just do the math. They're saying 3 to 5 billion could totally revitalize local news, could double the number of local reporters. If Bezos or Michael Bloomberg, who are looking at the Post, really care about journalism and democracy and charity, they'd funnel some of their money to local media with no strings attached. Why? I mean, some local outlets are great. Some are just as awful and biased as the Washington Post. Before and after, they had sort of been gutted by changes in technology and the economy. But you should rather have biased eyes on our public affairs than no eyes at all. What happens in the darkness, as the Washington Post might say, is that democracy falters and democracy dies. And that's a really serious problem. And we've seen examples of that we're going to get into in just a bit. But consumers have also woken up to the problem of bias. And so I think that's a slight improvement anyway. If you're going into your local newspaper and you know exactly how biased it is, you can sort of appreciate the reporting and interpret it with that lens of knowing that it's biased. So why, of all charities in the world, is local media worthy of money? Corruption, as we just said, is metastasizing and festering without it. We've seen example after example of this. National media is fanning the flames of division. There's actual academic research showing that the death of local news is tied to the rise in division. School board decisions, for instance, this is a really great example that could have been dealt with after they were brought to light by local media coverage, are now immediately going viral and becoming fodder in a national culture war in ways that just explodes local communities, makes them way more bitter and divisive. And again, if you'd had a local news reporter who knows all of the players in these hearings, the ecosystem would have been functioning way more healthily. That's why, for instance, look at George Santos. This is a great example. George Santos, a local outlet called the North Shore Leader, with a partisan Republican publisher, by the way, was calling attention to inconsistencies in Santos' story during his campaign. No other local outlets picked up on the story, nor did national media. The publisher told PBS that might have been because it was a busy cycle and people were distracted by bigger races, so it stayed in just this one local outlet that many voters may have missed, rather than getting pickup from other outlets in the community. As the publisher told PBS, though, quote, nobody else covers local news and local communities like the local newspaper does. Again, you might hate your local newspaper, or you may have hated it when it existed 10 years ago, but without any eyes on all of these goings on, public officials are corrupt, right? Because they know they can get away with it. They know they're not gonna have to answer to the local reporter. They just might have to answer to somebody on the national beat on some major story. But on the little things, on the ticky-tacky stuff, they're not gonna have to answer to anybody because nobody is following it, except in the case where their constituents might have time or interest in following it. But that's not everyone, and that's not every issue. There are all kinds of small things that happen in local government, that happen in local school boards, that happen from public officials that create major problems. And when you don't have the eyes of the press in the community, even if you hate the press, the reason that it's important to improve the press, to fix the press, whether you believe in challenging it through outlets like this, or trying to improve the existing institutions, which feels like a losing battle at this point, it needs to be improved because it's an essential part of the way we function as a constitutional republic. Without the press, without a free press, corruption runs amok. And so on the local level, that's a hugely, hugely important issue. It's very worthy of charity. It's very worthy of people's money. If they're going to give money away, maybe they should help local papers develop sustainable plans. If you're sort of funneling billions of dollars into local papers, okay, sustainable plans would be very helpful. We all know that Jeff Bezos and Michael Bloomberg own major national media outlets for reasons other than charity, right? We know Jeff Bezos doesn't own the Washington Post to save democracy from the darkness. But it would take just a fraction of their wealth to utterly transform local news. And that would go a shockingly long way towards transforming our politics for the better.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.